I bleed red.
Yeah.
As the Phillies fans say, and also any human with regular blood. Hello and welcome back to the Croak and Crow podcast. I am Spencer Cartier.
I am Tia Victoria.
And this here is Frank of the Fightin' Frank. He's wearing his red. The Phillies are crushing it in the World Series.
You have on yours.
I have on mine. As you guys are watching this, they're about to go into Game 4 of the World Series.
Is this the one where they're going to wear the pale blue?
The pale blue unis. Excuse my voice. Yeah, if you watched the last game, they destroyed the Astros 7-0.
It was awesome.
And so
after a rain delay, a rain cancel.
A rain postpone.
Postpone.
And so it's a good time to be a Phillies fan or a Philly fan. You know, the Union is in the championship. That happened when you weren't.
I know, you soccer people.
For you soccer people, not many of you out there, but the few, the proud, the soccer fans. Eagles are 7-0. Eagles posted a little thing on Twitter that said 7-0 with a handshake emoji. 7-0 handshake.
I love it.
Scored. And then I had one more thing to say about that, but so when we left you last, it was Wednesday. And we said Happy Halloween, which was on Monday. Today's Wednesday. Because we weren't going to see you. Halloween happened. You saw me dressed up as the Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
The one, the only.
Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
The Mr. Rogers. And I realized it's perfect. It was a perfect investment to get a cardigan because it's Phillies red.
Oh, yes.
I could just wear that, and I'm wearing Phillies colors.
Right.
And I am Mr. Rogers, but... all in all, it's a great... I bleed red.
Yeah.
As the Phillies fans say. And also any human with regular blood. But, yeah, how about you? Anything fun this weekend?
There was Halloween.
Rained a little bit on Halloween around us.
Oh, right. Monday was Halloween.
Yeah.
The actual Halloween day it rained. Was that wasn't the day for the Phillies game, was it? Were they playing on actual Halloween that got canceled?
No.
It's the next day?
No, they played on Saturday. They played on Friday, and then Saturday. Then they had off Sunday. They were supposed to play.
So
I don't know.
They were supposed to play, maybe.
No, the game that got postponed was on Tuesday. No.
Today's Wednesday.
Oh my gosh. Okay. They were supposed to play on Halloween, but they didn't because it rained.
Okay.
That is exactly what happened. Yes, because I went to the store to get pizza rolls.
Okay.
Because you can't watch a Phillies game without eating pizza rolls.
Because they have red and white on them.
They have Thank you for picking that up. And you were like,
and they're round like a baseball.
You said, don't go out there. The kids are going to run into the streets.
Yes.
And I said, Mama, I think I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I trekked my way there, dodging little ghosts, dodging little ghouls.
You shouldn't be dodging anyone. You should have been just crawling along.
That's what I was doing. Crawling past.
I hope everyone
goblins.
was safe because there were more kids because it's like a non-COVID Halloween.
I know, you know what? I was just thinking about how sad it is for the kids these days.
Oh dear.
It's like they miss everything. They miss their childhood, and then it's the first year back, and it rains on Halloween.
I know. Well, it rained a little later. If they went out early, they made it. And
That's
also,
what I thought. Yeah.
Maybe in other parts of the country it wasn't raining.
There's other parts of the country. It just feels like the world revolves around Philadelphia in these days.
So, what is it called? It's called something, and now I forget. It's called something, and it involves October 31st, November 1st, November 2nd. And it's
spooky season.
Yeah. So I can't remember what it's called, but it's something about Halloween being the eve of All Saints Day. So All Hallows Eve is Halloween, which is October 31st. Takes you into All Saints Day, which is November 1st. Takes you into All Souls Day, which is November
Dios de los Muertos.
2nd. Right. And then the Mexican celebration is Dios de los Muertos, which is just Spanish for Days of the Dead, which is the same as All Saints Day and All Souls Day.
And if you don't know what that is, there's a great documentary on it called Coco.
My name was Tia Victoria. I was one of the I was one of the dead ants from the movie. And I love Dios de los Muertos.
Do you know we can go back to the March. Do you know where Halloween originated?
Ireland.
Yeah, it was a quiz question last week, and
I can't lie and not say I don't know that. It was oh my god! Now that I can't think of
Sharma.
No, I can't think of any words.
I had Quizzo last week, and the person I was with was like, "Yeah, it's easy, Ireland," and he gave me the real name.
Yeah.
Or the old name for it.
Yeah.
And I was like, "All right, if you say so, sure." And they also
Spence, you should have known that.
Invented basketball.
Basketball.
And so he was right. It was invented in Ireland. Well, because Ireland was pretty, the Celtic religion was like sort of on the pagan side of things.
I'm sure there's all the countries of the world. I'm not sure. I absolutely know that all the countries of the world have days of the dead, days for the dearly departed, for the faithful.
I feel like, so my nose is a little stuffed up right now. I feel like I carry my mouth open a lot more often when, and so if I do.
Samhain. I think it's called Samhain.
I think so too.
Okay.
But yeah, and also because someone was saying that, they're like, isn't it crazy that so many cultures have? I think it's also based around the moon.
Okay.
Like some kind of harvest.
Oh,
moon.
well, you mean like because everything's dying now for winter?
Yeah, but like there's like a special. There's like some kind of like solstice that makes because before, if you were like an early person and you were like you travel from Ireland to Mexico and they're celebrating Day of the Dead, and it's like the same time, it must really be spooky. But it's also a certain part of like everyone's on the same wavelength.
Yeah, there's
or maybe there's a little something to it. Maybe the solstice decided to be the solstice that day because
it is this very special time, and I do feel that it's the spiritual realm is closer at this time for whatever reason, for these days, 31st, 1st, and 2nd, and you have a chance to communicate more easily. There are like I even saw something. There's something like for November 6th, which is a Day of the Dead, and that's my sister's birthday.
Oh.
But Christina. But all cultures have something to either like memorialize them, honor them. The Christian, Catholic, I think also maybe Lutheran, Anglican, theirs is a little more judgy. So you have the 1st of November is for people who were baptized, and the 2nd of November is for people who were not baptized. Oof. So you want to pray for if you believe in purgatory or something, that's really like we really need to help. They need help getting through.
Help me help you.
Help me help you. Now with Dia de los Muertos, the first day is for children. The second day is for adults. I could have that mixed back and forth, but that's how they do it, and that's fine. For me, I don't mind. I'll do 1st and 2nd for the same reason, Dia de los Muertos, and it just obviously at this point it's super popular. You can just Google it and see how you can celebrate it.
It's super popular, but it's also all past because today's November 3rd, correct?
No, today's November 2nd.
Oh, that's today.
Yeah,
today's Dia de los Muertos.
Yeah. The last of it'll be over tonight.
Well, then you know what? It's not over yet.
Yeah.
So tomorrow, we're bouncing between spirits and sports. The Spirits and Sports podcast. Eagles having a great season. If we win tonight,
if Phillies win tonight,
tomorrow, that will be the 3rd, we could win the World Series tomorrow.
Really?
Also, the Eagles are playing a Thursday night game. Which like one team week against the Houston Texans.
How funny.
Houston Astros, Houston Texans.
Right.
So we have the ability to fully just step on the heads of all Houstonites and raise our William Penn statue and throw it at the city of Houston.
Put it in the river like they did with the goalposts.
That's true, yeah. We'll steal the goalposts from Houston.
Oh, yeah.
And say, this is ours now. We own your city. And in like jurisdiction.
That's not from Houston, was it? That was from Alabama.
It was.
No, wasn't. What are you talking about?
You brought up the goalposts.
Yeah, because we did a podcast where the fans were so happy.
Know, but Houston is the team we're playing, so why would we?
Oh, you're just saying pick up someone else's goalpost?
Houston's.
Oh, right. That makes sense. I thought you meant the one they already threw in the river.
Why would we do that?
I thought you went to retrieve it, and
what does that have anything to do with Philadelphia?
Because I thought it would be like the Stanley Cup, like whoever's holding.
But they never had to do that.
Whoever's holding the goalpost is the new winner. I don't know.
Okay, well, it's going to be a good day. Is all I'm saying. So
yeah, I believe. I lost my faith a little bit
with a PH
with the Phillies. Yeah.
Oh, you lost your PH faith.
I lost my PH faith because I was just going along like, yeah, we're in the World Series. This is awesome. And then I was reading sports experts saying, you're just like, it's such a glitch that you're in there and you don't deserve you. And then the first game was a glitch. And so I thought, but
glitch in the Matrix.
Of course. And
I don't know. I mean, like, it's too soon to tell, and this podcast might not age well, but it's giving 2017 Eagles.
Oh, really?
Because, I mean, like, that was a magic season in itself. Sort of same concept. Like, it was sort of a little bit different because, like, we were the best. But then by losing Carson Wentz and, like, all the people, it was, like what you're saying, where every step of the way it was, okay, you won one playoff game with a backup quarterback. Okay. And then, like, okay, you're going against Tom Brady. And then we ended up winning. And that was where all the dog masks came back then. It was the idea of that underdog mentality. But our city's blue collar. I'm blue collar.
You mentioned the song Dancing on My Own. And
I'm not going to sing it. Although I love to.
And it's really booming in area karaoke's.
Oh, I'm sure. And you know what? I got a little... maybe he spoke on it already. But I've been checking Callum Scott's Instagram. Just for context, Callum Scott remade Robin's song Dancing on My Own. So Callum Scott did Dancing on My Own, his own version. Then Tiesto made a remix, a little dance remix of it, which has become the Phillies playoff anthem. After every win, starting from when we first clinched the playoffs, that's the song that plays, all the fans sing. It's great. It's like really just, it's become a snowball effect of now everyone knows. Every bar, as soon as the game is won, boom, I'm dancing on my own. Oh. So I keep checking his like Instagram. I'm like, yo, throw on like a Phillies jersey. Like, you're from England, right? Like he's an English guy.
Okay.
Like, I think it would be nice, and also I think it would do him well.
Yeah.
If like he was like, hey, go Phillies.
I'm surprised that he's not.
I don't get it.
Especially if I was going to say, if he's from here, he might not want to alienate other places. But if he's not even from here,
he's from England, and I'm like, it's not. I don't even blame him. I kind of do blame him, but like, I'm not a marketer in any sense of the words. But if I was like on his management team,
yeah,
I would be like, put on this Phillies hat and like say go Phillies. Then you'll have people go on your Instagram who's like looking up that song. His loss. Not ours. All right, guys. It is Wednesday. As you know, like we do every week, we have a little special thing called One Word Wednesday. On One Word Wednesday, we pick a word from the dictionary, English one, not the England that Callum Scott's from, the England where I'm from. The English where I'm from, America.
New England, but not New England.
Old England. Wait.
Old New England.
Mid England. And we pick a word and we talk about it. We just chit chat about the word. It might be just a fun word. You know, my favorite word is juxtaposition.
I like that.
Yeah. I just like what it means. It's like, because I feel like a lot of people's favorite words are either too used. My favorite word is moist.
Come on. No one says that.
or my favorite word is onomatopoeia.
Yeah.
How often do you use like onomatopoeia? Juxtaposition, like the contrast of two things. I feel like it can be used a lot. Like, oh yeah, I like the juxtaposition of that.
Yeah.
It's just fun to say. Juxtaposition. Then we talk about some spiritual significance. This is a spiritual podcast, as you guys know or may not know, because it's been pretty sports and spirity. So without further ado, what is the word?
Assume.
Don't assume. It just makes an ass out of you and me.
Yeah, assume.
Assume.
We've said the word assume. Assumption. We've said the word assumption, and that's when
you are being assumed.
Yeah, and like, it's not anyone, right? I don't think anyone's ever been assumed up into heaven except for.
Don't make assumptions.
Exactly. So this has nothing to do with about rising up or levitating. This is just the actual word assume.
Assume. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I assume you want me to start. So yeah, assume. They say you shouldn't assume.
Right.
But then, like, maybe sometimes you should assume.
Should you? Who knows? There's a Bible.
You should have assumed I wasn't going to help you get the laundry off the top of the dryer.
Right. And then that would probably be up for debate because.
Should I have assumed?
Well, I mean, like the person who's saying like that.
Shouldn't you have just
They're
assumed?
saying it's obvious, but then like the person who did not assume would say their reasons for why I didn't assume that, you know?
You know, remember the old books Amelia Bedelia?
Yes.
And she would do all the wrong things. And so couldn't the house owner come back and say, shouldn't you have assumed when I said...
Right. But it sounds like...
Pair the socks.
It's
I didn't
pretty,
put pairs in the socks.
So yeah. Well, it sounds like it's a pretty... What's that word? It's, I don't know. It's a very vague word. A vague idea. You know? You don't have proof. I was going to say there's a Bible story in Acts of the Apostles where Paul, I think, the people are after Paul because they feel like he has... gone against that. He's trying to bring down their traditions and their ceremonies and their way of life, and that so they're mad at him anyway, and they're trying to get him. But then they say to him, "You know what? We saw you with," and they say some guy's name. Just say Theo, because I don't know how to say it. We saw you with Theo, which means you brought him into the temple, and he's a Greek, and that means you defiled the temple. So that was like the last, that's the nail in the coffin for him to be arrested. And in the Bible, it says the people assumed that because they had seen him with him earlier, that is what he had done. That the guy had gone into the temple where he was not invited, and therefore defiled it. But funny enough, in the Bible, they don't ever make it clear. Was he really with Paul? And that happened or not. So apparently, I guess it wasn't that important to the story, but it just shows you that assuming things, you can be wrong. Like, I feel like people say you should have assumed makes it seem like you're always going to be right. It was obvious, without a shadow of a doubt, but assumptions can often be wrong. And you acted as if it was
the word,
as if it was fact.
Well, yeah, I think the whole idea of don't assume, especially in that context, can go hand in hand with like why you shouldn't judge, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of like judgments are made on assumptions. Yes. And it's assumptions that a person had malintent, or it's assumptions that the person knew better, assumptions that the person has the same brain chemistry that you do. Like I think a lot of it is like, well, like why did you take it in your own hands? Well, I assumed that was, I assumed this was the right thing to do. I and especially a lot, you're assuming for God, right? Like, yeah. Why are you standing outside with picket fence and saying God hates you?
Picket fence. Picketing.
And you say, oh, because that's what God would want me to do.
Right.
Another way of saying that exact sentence is, I assume that's what God wants me to do. Yeah. And by assuming, you're taking it upon yourself, and I don't think you should do that. And so that's all negative. And someone would say, well, okay, well, there's some things that are positive. Should I not assume that God wants me to do the right thing? Right. And my argument to that, my little self-argument I'm having here, is no. I think a lot of times we get stuck in that with trying to get one step ahead of God's plan for us, and we assume it. And it's like, oh, like I got the job, or like I moved to this new city and I think I'm finally living out God's plan. And it's like, well, don't assume it fully, because then when it comes crashing down and it doesn't work out, it's I failed. Yeah. It's no, you just assumed that was the right way.
It seems to me like it will always be bad.
What?
Assuming.
Well, that's sort of what I'm saying. It's like assuming takes out the ability to have another way, and there's only one person who knows the true way, being God. And so like I was just to finish my second point of like the good things is
yeah, tell me something good.
Well, that's sort of what I'm saying. It's like when you assume the right thing, or you assume this is the way I'm supposed to go exactly, and you go off of it, you are like, well, that was the way I'm supposed to be. That's the way that God has me on. It's like, you're assuming that.
Yeah.
You're assuming, and so then, if you get out of a relationship that you've assumed was the relationship you're supposed to be in, what's it called? You feel like you failed, and that was the way, but you shouldn't. So there's a difference of going like pushing for things and heading in directions or regarding other people, like teaching people or doing that. But I think assuming kind of pigeonholes you without fact. Assumptions throughout history is like, in science, is what made a lot of people seem like fools, right? Like, because there's like, you can have theories, and that's the whole idea of now is like the theory of evolution, where they have made it very clear in science that although we know without a beyond reasonable doubt that evolution happened, we have the fossils, we have it, we don't have what is required to make it a law, right? And so it's the same thing I think with God, where it's like we can have these things, but where it's like, is this where you're supposed to be? And it's like, yes, but it's not in stone. It's like, it's not I wasn't there.
Yeah,
I'm not God.
If every single solitary thing isn't covered in an instruction, I think it would be, as they say, safe to assume.
Yeah.
So if they say, don't, I don't even know, like, just don't put these things by the door because it's a fire hazard. And it's like, well, they didn't mention this. And it's like, it's safe to assume they didn't want anything by the door, So maybe that would be your challenge. Whenever you want to assume something, you might double check yourself and say, like, is it safe to assume that? Because you could assume, like, I could assume that a gun's not loaded. Like, why would it be loaded? That it's not safe to assume that.
Yeah, I think I'm going to change my whole position.
Okay. That's what Thinking on Wednesday's about.
That's what Thinking on Wednesday's about. I like what you're saying, and the whole idea of safe to assume. I'm going to use my science analogy I'm going to change that analogy to make the rest of the analogies make sense. Because even as you were talking, I was thinking, well, so then sort of a theory is an assumption. It's a safe assumption. It is safe for us to assume that that humans evolved.
Right.
Why is it? We can back it up by evidence.
Right.
Well, then it's a law. It's like, well, no, technically it's not, because we weren't there to record it, so it can't be proven.
Right.
But it can be very much assumed.
Right.
And that goes back to the other things of judgment and stuff, where it's like a lot of people treat assumptions as law. Right. And that's where the problem comes in.
Yes.
It's not a problem to make the assumption that person should not kill that person.
Right.
But to then say, they're going to hell, they're condemned. It's you've made your assumption a law that you do not control. That is to the control of God. Or like, you can assume that if you have two job opportunities, one as a scam call collector and one as a dog saver. Yeah. That God wants to push you in the one way, but it's like, it's safe to assume that, but maybe you end up being a scam call collector and then you break it down, you give out evidence to turn it, whatever the case may be. Yeah, yeah. So you can't say it's a law. Right. It's a assumption, and why it's bad is like a theory versus a law. Well, a theory's not bad. Well, it's only not bad when you don't treat it as one. Right. Because then when someone comes along and says, which has happened so many times in science, with Einstein and the idea of gravity bending, or just that's too difficult. The sun not being the center of the universe. Right. That was safe to assume at the time. When they found out it wasn't true, there was a lot of people that said, that's the law. And right. It's like, no, that was an assumption. Right. You never proved it. Right. You believed it. You assumed. Yeah. You assumed that the sun, and now you're stuck in your assumption because you thought of it as more than an assumption. Right. I think it's just good to know that you're assuming. Yeah. And
I think you should recognize it when you're assuming.
Yeah, and I think that is a lot of things in faith, because I think you and I assume a lot. Assumption's great. As long as you know it's assumptions.
Yeah.
And we always use a lot more words to explain what we say when we say assume. But in reality, anytime we say, oh, well, this is what we got, you can get something different. It's like all of it is based on assumptions, knowing that they're assumptions. And I think in life, most things should be treated as assumptions so that we, the things that our law are matter more. And then that is like what God creates. Like God has the law, and we make our assumptions, and we can change our assumptions.
Yes.
Because it's also good to change your assumptions.
Right.
Just like people change their theories.
Right. Yeah.
Just like I did in this whole podcast.
Mid-podcast.
This was all planned.
Yeah.
I made an assumption that I knew.
If you see someone parking in a handicap spot, and then you see them walking, reasonably easily into the store, you assume that they're doing a scam, or, they're taking a spot of somebody who needs it. But, then you could question yourself, hey, I'm just making that assumption because they look a certain way to me, but it's not necessarily true. They could have other problems.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you treated that assumption as the fact, you would be, hey, why are you parking in that? And then you have the whole conversation of, I have a severe nerve disorder.
And you would, back to your intro, you would make an ass out of yourself.
You would make an ass out of yourself. It's like, well, why did you assume that I didn't?
Right.
Well, because I walked well?
Right.
I'm blind, right? And it's like, well, that was a car, though.
Yeah. I assumed you could see because you were driving.
That's one thing I didn't even question. Yeah, no, exactly.
And we talked before about we don't appreciate when people meet us or watch us and they say, you're a Christian, so we assume that you have these political beliefs, you have these beliefs about heaven, you have these beliefs about anything, because that's an assumption. You hear a word, oh, you're American, so I assume this is what you do, or you're a boy, and I assume this about you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think assumptions, just to finish up, assumptions are a human thing. But I think the most important, it's sort of how we end a lot of podcasts, but it's usually always ends up being true, is sort of navigating what you're feeling and what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And the more you can do that clearly, they say about like anger and stuff. And it's like, when you're angry, ask yourself, why am I angry?
Right.
And then you can fix that.
Yeah.
And it's easier than just being like, who cares why I'm angry? I just want to hurt someone. It's like, have you eaten today? Sometimes with IT people, it's like, can you try turning it off, turn it on again?
Right.
Sometimes our own things are as simple as knowing bases of problems. It's like, no, I actually didn't eat. You eat, you're a whole nother person. Yeah,
I think we start out on the ground level of everything of life, right? Yeah. And I think assuming things, and it helps us learn how to live here on earth. I assume this is the way you do this, or this is how you go, whatever. And then questioning your assumption is more sophisticated level where you say, okay, beyond the basic, like I assume this is how this is done.
Yeah.
When you start assuming, you start waving the assuming branch over everything.
Yeah. So like, I think just definitely know when you're assuming, and assuming, I think also we all assume naturally, like you said, it's a natural thing, and assuming while knowing you're assuming rather than thinking
right,
opens the door for learning, right? Like, I assumed what you did was easy until I did it, and I realized it was hard.
You're right.
And it's like, you're able to then see the world more rather than be like, I don't care, what you do is easy. And it's like, use that assumption and then try to get as much knowledge as you can. There's like, when we're born, we assume a lot of things. I think the goal is to change a lot of build on a lot of those assumptions and assume less. Consume less and assume less. And that is our podcast.
Okay.
Well, we'll be back tomorrow. Go Phillies, go Eagles, go home. Peace.